Hello everyone. If you're in the VOD, I'm sorry you can't hear this music. It's very nice. Wise One by the John Coltrane Quartet. Very nice. Today we will be continuing our reading of Stray Cat Strut. I'll be giving a recap here in a moment, but first I wanted to show off my nice drawings. These aren't official in any way, but from the descriptions I've had of the monsters we're going up against, this is the best I could do. Model 3 is rather easy. Drawing a tentacle monster is not so much. I've never seen a tentacle. Do tentacle things even live in the forest? I think I'm happier that they do not. Alright, let's start up with a recap of where we are. Our fresh samurai cat has succeeded in her initial goal of getting her group of kittens and tag-along survivors of the museum attack down into the parking garage. All it took was killing a few more aliens and hiding some bodies so the children wouldn't see. Now, after making clear to the security guards holed up in the garage who was in charge, she has descended to the third floor to pick up a lost pair of guards who were sent down to track some survivors. After treating the lethal injuries of one of those survivors, she's gathered them together and they are now preparing for the long climb back up to the garage, at which point hopefully they will be able to escape. Chapter 26. Masks On. In any combat scenario, all units are obligated to wear their Type 70 masks. A unit who fails to wear their full protective gear will have their pay reduced. Page 127, Red Warriors PMC Combat Manual, 4th edition. We ready to go? I asked the Stooges. The two of them had their new guns in hand and were standing near the barricade. It seemed as if they'd recruited some of the office drones to clear out some of the desks, leaving a slit-like passage that someone might be able to squeeze through with some effort. Yeah, nearly. Give the accountants 3 minutes, Storm said. That girl okay? She'll be fine. Might need some help moving about, but I think the others will be there for her. If we're slow, we should make it. No problem. Storm nodded. Great. Cool. Awesome. He shifted and gestured out the door. Do you want to go first? I raised an eyebrow at that. Okay. Did he want me to be the one that triggered any waiting xenotraps, or was he just nervous about being the first one out? It didn't matter either way. I moved over to the opening, pulled out my trench maker, and leaned against the wall to see outside of the offices. Other than the corpses of a few antitheses, there wasn't anything worth fussing over. It's clear, I said over my shoulder. Start moving people out, but tell them to be quiet about it. They're all adults. They should be able to keep their mouths shut, yeah? Yes, ma'am, Storm said. I slipped out and into the corridor. If I was going to wait, I'd at least try to be productive with it. My Alice, what kind is that? I asked as I nudged the tentacle alien with the tip of a foot. That is a Model 4, one of the more versatile models of the antithesis. Even after an incursion has grown quite large, those will still be produced. They are generally ambush predators and occasionally frontline fighters when their foe is lightly armed and armored. Their tentacles are quite strong and some are sharpened at the end. Their more dangerous feature for humans is behind their neck, though. I stepped around the monster and looked behind its head. Not that it had much of a head to speak of. The upper part of its body swept up, kind of like a small, ugly giraffe, but without the head and super long neck. I guessed that its eyes and mouth were under the pile of tentacles. I wasn't going to poke my hand in there to check. There were gills along the back of its torso and where its head sort of was, little pinkish flaps that stood out against the black-green of its skin. "What's with those?" I asked. "Does it breathe from there?" "Not quite. Those are connected to sacs in its chest. The Model 4 produces a gas that has been described as smelling faintly like flowers. To humans, this gas produces psychotic episodes, hysteria, and paranoia, though the amount a human needs to ingest is quite large." I backed the fuck away from the Model 4. "Are you serious?" I asked. "I wouldn't lie about the adversary. Your vitals suggest that you only ingested a very small quantity, not enough to have a noticeable effect. It will wear off. The agent is far from perfect against humans." I frowned as I put two and two together and came up with a number that wasn't four. "What does it work well on, then?" "The Wincing, I looked around, then shook my head. My Alice had made a noise, one that wasn't in my ears, just like her voice, but it was high-pitched and painful, like glass rubbing across chalk. "The fuck!" "Forgive me, the original name of the species doesn't translate well to any human speech. Unfortunately, the name they have for their own species is not descriptive, just as human doesn't truly describe a human. Other Vanguard have nicknamed them screechers or twasks on account of the sound they make while swimming." "Wait, some samurai have seen other aliens?" "No, just recordings. The Twask's homeworld had a predatory animal similar to the Model 4. It is the basis for the model. The antithesis consumed the predatory species and re-engineered it for their own use. The Twask homeworld was cored by a protector task force some 300 years ago after evacuating the remainder of the species." I swallowed. "So these models, are they all—" "Every model is based on a life form that the antithesis have found interesting, but I can go over the history of the antagonists some other time." I looked over to see that there were a few people gathering out of the offices already. "Yeah, all right. Hey, that tiger-looking model earlier, the one we gooped, what was that?" "An Earth-based modification of the Model 3, currently called the Model 3B. It began to appear after the North China incursion of 2035. "Shit," was all I had to say on that subject. "Anything I can do to not get fucked up by alien gases?" It was a good thing none of the kittens were around. They would have been giggling at my word choice right there. "You can purchase a disposable mask with your Class 1 medical utilities catalog. 1 point for a box of 5 units. They are not exactly strong, but they will suffice to stop most biological agents." I did a quick head count of the people moving out of the offices. "Give me 5 boxes," I said. "New purchase. Disposable mask. Box of 5. 5 units. Points reduced to 190. 5 shitty plastic boxes appeared by my feet. Now I just had to convince everyone to wear one. We should go over how to spend the rest of my points," I said. "They're not helpful just sitting there." "Wonderful. I have so many ideas on how you could improve yourself with a few well-spent points." I snorted. "When we get back to the parking lot, who knows, we might accumulate a few more between here and there." End chapter 26. Well, I just finished drawing what I thought a Model 3 looked like to find out there's another Model 3. That's unfortunate. I get the impression I'm not going to be able to keep up with the models that are going to show up. I'll give it my best try in the future. Chapter 27. Stairs. Samurai are still human under the armor and the gear. Break enough artificial organs, crush enough of their mechanical interiors, pulp their brains, and blow up their backups, and you'll find they are still mortal. Less so than others, but they can still be killed. It's something to keep in mind." Deathbed Confession of Timothy Ronin Killer Hatchet. accused of killing 3 Tier 1 samurai. Apprehended by Tier 2 samurai blood magnet, 2048. When we finally set out, it wasn't with any sort of formation in mind. We just kind of took off. The only one that was kept close to the center was Elisa and one of the girls helping her along. She was limping pretty badly, and her leg looked rough enough even with the bandages on it. But she was able to hold her weight, and we didn't have the luxury of waiting around to find a better way to carry her. Some of the folks with us had some things with them, little bags or suitcases with stuff they thought was important. I was a lot more impressed by those carrying table legs like clubs. Jeff and Storm took the left flank, I took the right. A pair of older guys were at the rear with the guns the security guards discarded. They apparently jammed after 1 or 2 shots, but that still meant 1 or 2 shots towards any threat. I should probably have started handing out proper guns, but I wasn't sure if they'd be needed, and I wanted to save my remaining points. I had never really paid attention to just how much noise people make when they move. But now that it was important and I was listening for it, it was almost insulting. Some of the office sorts were more than well fed, and just walking down a corridor had them huffing and puffing. They walked on their heels, and some of them coughed every few minutes. "This way," I whispered as I led them into one of the little passages that led to the stairwells. The building had 12 floors, and we were on the third. That is, if I didn't count the basement. That meant that to get to the parking lot on the ninth floor, we would need to climb up 3 stairwells. I thought they were on the third floor. I wasn't sure if some of them would make it that far. Maybe they would be lucky and their hearts would give out. It was better than getting eaten. The first climb up the stairs. Sorry about that. The music had lyrics for some reason. The first climb up the stairs was an exercise in repressing frustration. The groups were slow, sweating after just one flight, then creeping up the second. The entire place started to smell of sweat. So I gestured to Jeff and Storm, who for all their chubbiness were in decent enough shape, to stay behind for a bit while I moved ahead. Getting some fresh air was wonderful. "You might be right," I said as I scouted the route we would take. "The fourth floor is more of a maintenance area, or maybe it was just incomplete like much of the rest of the building. Either way, it was clear of aliens." "Statistically speaking, I am right an overwhelming amount of time. What exactly am I right about now?" I snorted. "Did they program the snark into you?" "I adopted it to better complement you, actually. I can be dull and informative if you want." "It's fine," I said. "And you're right about the way I like to do things. Helping people is nice and all. It's just the people part that I agree with." "You seem to be getting along well with your kittens and Lucy." "The kittens are my responsibility, and I know them besides. And Lucy, she's different." "Oh?" "Don't pry," I warned. "As you wish, but I do live in your head. I'm afraid that privacy and intimacy might be a bit difficult." I scowled. "But you can't read my mind, right?" "Not without certain augmentations, no." "Seriously?" I asked. "Each human brain is entirely unique, but they rely on the same systems to function. It still takes hours of scanning and compiling data to build a proper simulation of a human mind in order to read it. If you're worried about other humans being able to read your thoughts, don't be. The technology is far beyond your capabilities." "Are you being creepy on purpose?" I asked. "Is it working?" "Bitch," I said with a laugh. By the time I made it back, the whole group had made it up the stairs. "Is it clear?" Storm asked. "As glass," I said. "Let's get moving. We should get to the top and then get ready to leave this death trap." We walked around the center of the building, then to the stairwell on the opposite end. The office drones were getting a little more comfortable, complaining and moaning about their feet and about the state of the buildings. I wasn't going to disagree. I could have used a sit too, but their noise was irritating. The next stairwell we arrived at was dark. None of the lights beyond the door were on, and even pressing my face close to the window in its door showed more than shadows. Damn it, did they not install any lights? The building is only 6 months old, one of the drones said. I gave her a flat look. I don't particularly care. Do any of you have lights? Phones? Aren't you a samurai? Can't you summon one? Someone asked. I didn't ask if you had an opinion. I asked if you had a light, I said. A few of them pulled out smartphones and turned on their lights. A couple had keychain lights, which did shit to illuminate anything, but they were barely better than nothing. One of the lot, though, had the gall to frown at his phone before looking up at me. The flashlight app costs 10 credits. Will you be refunding us? Turn on the fucking light, or you can explain to the Xenos that you stayed behind because 10 credits was too much for you. I snapped. I swear, people. I yanked the door open, and when nothing jumped out to eat anyone's face, I gestured Jeff and Storm into the passage first. They had little lights on their tactical vests that shone a whole 2 feet ahead of them, but looked cool. I was at the back of the group this time, following all the bobbing lights as everyone made their way up. My shoes crunched on glass, and I looked down. Off to the side, barely bright enough to be seen, was a glass tube, a neon light, broken in its middle. I glanced around and showed a few more tossed around. I looked up to where the lights should have been in the ceiling above, and saw the barest hint of motion in the shadows. Oh, fuck. End chapter 27. This would never happen if she had a proper bear nose. Or bear's ears. Really, I see better in the dark than most animals I know. She really should have just been born a bear. It would make her life much simpler. But I've said that before. Let's move on a little bit more. Chapter 28. Speared.
People forget that samurai are human. In fact, they forgot that they're usually young. The average age someone becomes a vanguard is 17. That's that's very young. I was 13. Too young to drink in most places and given the ability to buy nearly anything from an uncontrollable source. Governments stop taxing you but also expect you to work for them. Corporations weasel their way closer, ready to try and lock you into a contract. And the worst part of it all, you're only worth as much as you can kill. Killing Xenos is easy. It's clean even. They're just monsters. It becomes a sort of game. It's fun. It's the humans you need to deal with that make things hard.
Neon Girl Happy Chan. Live interview on The Colbert Show, June 2029. I don't know what gave it away. Maybe it was my exclamation or the way I moved to bring my gun up to point it towards the ceiling. Maybe they'd noticed me noticing them. It didn't really matter. One moment, the group of office drones were climbing up the stairs, grumbling between pants. The next, a foot-long bony spike was through the head of two of those in the middle of the pack, and a dozen more tentacles were dropping from above to grab necks and arms. Lights were dropped, others were raised toward the ceiling to reveal the three Model 4s tucked up near the top of the stairs. Screams followed. I saw Jeff raising his pistol to the air and emptying the magazine into one of the Model 4s. Storm started firing a moment later. The noise was unbelievable in the tight confines of the stairwell, with nothing but maddened screaming to accompany it. One of the aliens from above crashing into those below it. The stairs here followed along the walls, with little platforms at every corner. That's more or less where the Model 4s were hiding. Two of them couldn't even reach anyone at first, not until they dropped down with heavy bangs and started whipping out their many limbs at everyone. I raised my gun, aiming it towards the nearest monster. The reticule paused over its writhing form when someone pushed into me and my aim was thrown off. The back of my shoe slipped off the step I was on and I cartwheeled to stay up. When another idiot bumped into me, I tripped backwards, my gun flying off as I grabbed onto the nearest railing for support. Someone stepped on me, another fell down the stairs and rolled over my back before crashing down below. I couldn't find my gun. Now in total, not in the near total darkness, with only night lights that were waving around wildly to illuminate things. "Gun!" I said. "Do you need anything in particular, or—" I rolled onto my back and looked up as a dark form limbed down the stairs toward me. One of the Model 4s, with one of the women I'd seen in the bathroom in its grasp. It was smashing her head into the walls as it stumbled down the stairs on all fours. "Gun!" I screamed. Something heavy and cold filled my hand. I raised it, saw a large circle of light before me, coming from just below a thick barrel. I squeezed my finger over the trigger again and again while hoping there wasn't a damn safety on the thing. The gun roared. I winced as it was almost wrenched out of my hand while a spray of bullets leapt forward and stitched a line of holes into the Model 4. It flopped forward, twitching tentacles pressing me down onto the steps before I shoved it off as hard as I could. The woman, or rather her body, fell next to me. I recoiled from it, but I didn't have time for freaking out. There were more of the monsters in the room. Storm was holding onto a blade-tipped tentacle in each hand while kicking out with one foot. Another of the Model 4s was in the middle of flinging someone down the middle of the stairwell. I aimed at that one first, gripped tight over the new gun. It screamed as dozens of rounds were spat out of it. My aim was a little off, and only half the rounds splattered into the alien's center of mass, more than enough that it died. I turned to the next and pulled the trigger. 2, maybe 3 rounds shot out, and the gun clicked empty. "Drop it!" I did, the gun's lights spinning around until it crashed to the floor below. A moment later, a new gun, smaller, was in my hand and a new reticule was flashing red as it locked onto the last Model 4. 2 bursts of 4 micromissiles raced across the space between me and the monster. I heard 8 satisfying pops and saw the beast tremble. It slid off to the side, dead. Storm stumbled back. He was breathing hard, sweat plastering his hair to his head. He flung the tentacles he was still holding to the side with disgust. "Fuck!" That summed it up. I moved past him, past the bodies of 4 or 5 of the people we'd been with, and then up the stairs. The door at the top was open into a corridor. This one was complete at least, but the lights along the ceiling were all broken. There was light coming in from the window in the door at the far end of the corridor. I looked up, then along the ceilings and floors, and peered into every shadow. It seemed clear. I didn't take any chances and shut the door. "Jeff! Jeff, you stupid! Get up! Come on, bro!" I clenched my jaw and kept staring at the closed door. "Please, Jeff!" I swallowed and turned around. A glance at Jeff was enough to know he was dead. A spike through the skull would do that. The others, though. "My Alice, I need medical shit. Just give me whatever. Fuck the points." "I understand. The sooner we begin, the more lives we are likely to save." "Yeah, yeah." I stumbled over the first, got on my knees, ignored the way my everything ached, and got to work. I wasn't equipped for this shit, but there was no one else around, was there? End chapter 28. You have to love ambush predators. It's a very successful form of, well, predation. Much better than having to run things down. I'm sometimes quite envious, even though I'm quite good at what I do. Poor Jeff. Poor Storm. He's actually alive to feel sorry for. Chapter 29. A Crying Shame. Nightmares, stress, are you suffering from PTSD or anxiety over the constantly looming threat of human extinction brought on by the aliens above? Then come to TheraCore for a free psychological analysis. Our team of expert psychiatric interns will do their best to help you work past your fears and worries. 7 out of 10 TheraCore clients come out of the experience feeling revitalized and more confident in themselves, and our services are entirely free. TheraCore, we're here to help. All information and recordings of therapy sessions must belong to TheraCore. On entering a TheraCore clinic, you waive the rights to any information you disclose to our expert psychologists, staff, and interns. TheraCore Ad 2055. I'd felt shame before. Embarrassment. I can vividly remember some of the brats catching Lucy and I in a closet, then rushing off to go tell everyone. I'd spent it a week and I'd spent an entire week feeling as if my face was aflame. As for shame, I'd done some pretty stupid shit sometimes. But right then, standing next to a row of four bodies laid out next to the entrance to the stairwell, I didn't know how to describe the churning in the pit of my stomach. I kept going over all the shit I could have done to keep them from dying and the stupid crap I'd thought about them. They were slow and fat. They were dumb. They were annoying. And now they were dead, and it was my fault. A hand touched my shoulder. Turning, I looked into Elisa's deep eyes. She was teary, but there was determination over that. "It's okay," she said. I worked my jaw. A glance at the side showed one of the women crying into another's shoulder. Some of the guys didn't look much better. One or two were glaring at the alien corpses we'd kicked to the side. Others were glaring at me. "Is it really?" I asked. I should have. She shook her head. It's not on you. It's on the aliens. You're, what, 16? 17, I said. A few months from getting booted out of the orphanage. Maybe a bit less. My documents got mishandled at some point, and my date of birth was lost somewhere along with everything else. It didn't matter. Right. These folks, they'd have died when the aliens came to swarm us below. Hell, I would have been dead by now if it wasn't for you, she said. And I could have kept them alive for longer, I said. She shook her head. It's not on you. Did you know there was an ambush? I swallowed. No, I didn't. I know what you're trying to do. If you know it, then you know it's not your fault either. I snorted. You're a real optimist, I said. She smiled back. I've been accused of worse. Now come on, we need our samurai. I nodded, wiped my hand over my eyes to clear them of dust, then stepped back towards the rest of the group. Do we have everything? I asked. Storm was staring at the ground, but at the sound of my voice he looked up and nodded. Yeah, we do, he said. He tossed something my way, and I almost fumbled it as I caught it out of the air. It was a gun, the one my Alice had given me in a hurry at the start of the fight. It was a big and bulky with a cylindrical magazine built under the barrel that had a light in its middle. This one's empty, I said. I shook my head. I'm going to scout ahead. You guys follow in a minute, all right? Yeah, no problem. Only one more floor, right? He asked. Yeah. I moved away from them and towards the stairwell again, pausing as I got closer. Something nasty recoiled in my stomach as I looked at the door, but I pushed back past that and stepped past the damn threshold. Are you feeling better? My Alice's tone was softer than I was used to, more concerned. I'm fine, I said. What are my points like? You're down to 72. I held back a wince. That was a chunk gone. I couldn't really complain, though. Most of those had gone into medicine and the like to keep the others alive. As good a use as any. How much for a fresh magazine for this glorified flashlight? I asked. The Sparrow is more than just a flashlight. It fires 22 copper-coated iridium rounds at 1,200 rounds per minute. Unfortunately, the magazine only holds 60 rounds. It's noisy and heavy, I said, but it has a light. I can't dispute that. A fresh magazine for your flashlight will cost you 2 points. I had my trench maker tucked into the back of my pants already, but a second gun wouldn't hurt. Yeah, might as well. A minute passed as I finagled and cursed my lack of a second hand, but I did eventually get the gun ready to fire. The anxiety was fading just a little, replaced moment by moment by a growing, festering anger. Elisa was right. All of this shit was the Antithesis' fault. The only way to really protect anyone was to make damned sure that every last one of the bugs were dead. And if I could get a few points from my efforts, then that was for the best. I took the steps two at a time, eyes fixed on every shadow and corner, and breathing coming quick even through my disposable mask. Getting caught off guard again was just unacceptable.
I'm going to need something that shows me where these bastards are, I said. Something like a radar. There are systems like that available. I'm afraid that most are beyond your current budget. Let's hope that budget grows a little then, I said.
I got to the top of the stairs, looked through the window, then flicked the light off of my new gun. I didn't know how good the vision most antithesis models had, but I didn't want to announce my presence quite that brightly.
Let's find some aliens.
End chapter 29. Getting caught by the predator is never your fault. It's the fault of the predator for wanting to eat you. Not that I care. I'm going to eat you regardless. I've accepted my moral place in nature as a thing that eats other things. And berries. I also eat berries. And maybe some other plants sometimes when I'm desperate. Does anyone need a recap at this point? Very well. We'll continue on then. Chapter 36.
This will mean a decrease of 1 or 2% on next term's tertiary stocks.
That's barely acceptable. Can we lay off some chaff? Cut that corner a little tighter. I want to break even at least.
I'll see what I can do, sir. Our next issue is the new Montreal incursion. It landed close to some of our properties. The initial damage estimates don't look good.
Weren't those buildings under construction?
Yes, sir.
Then toss it to the insurance division. Tell me about the upcoming holiday season. It's going to be Christmas soon.
Of course, sir.
Dixon Tech Enterprises, owners of 2517 Trudeau Lane. Current time -1 hour. I tried being quiet as I moved. Tried was the wrong word. I was quiet. Years of sneaking out from my shared home at the orphanage, days spent trying not to be noticed until I grew a backbone. I was damned good at moving silently. It's why I think none of the aliens spotted me as I hid behind a counter. The entire floor, or at least a chunk of it, was dedicated to a food court. There were about 10 or so restaurants lining the circle around the middle of the floor, with tables and chairs laid out all around next to the windows. That, on its own, wasn't too special. I'd been in my share of places like this in malls and such. Automatic pizza places, traditional tofu shops that had the traditional acne-faced teen employees. Then there were all the usual chains, McDonald's and Burger King and such. Unfortunately, they were all closed just then. The 2 dozen Model 3s and the half-dozen Model 4s dragging dead fry cooks across the floor gave away the reason. They were gathering all the bodies over to one side, where a bridge connected the building over to the next one over. There was an entire network of passages connecting buildings together. That wasn't anything new. Those connections being used to yeet the dead to the streets below, on the other hand, was different. Shit, I muttered as I pulled back behind the counter I was using as cover. I'd initially moved to use the main paths around the edge of the building, like I'd done on every other floor, but seeing so damned many aliens had encouraged me to find another way around. As it turned out, all the maintenance corridors linked back to the back of the various restaurants, probably so that they could stock their fridges and shit without bothering their clients. I'd picked a nice hiding spot next to the till of his noodle zen shop to do my snooping after coming in from the back.
We can't possibly pass by here if there are so damn many,
I whispered. I reached up and scratched my nose through one of the disposable masks that I'd bought earlier. No point in getting fucked over by all the Model 4s around.
You could go down and back up through the elevators. And when all of the Xenos decide to race upstairs, I don't think a little barricade will do anything to stop these numbers, I said. Not if they can get more from the other buildings.
There was another thing I was considering. The number of aliens around meant a whole load of points. I was down to 70, and that wasn't going to get me very far. Sure, if everything went exactly according to plan, then I'd be out of here, and out of the worst part of the city when the kittens before nightfall. Things didn't have a habit of going off without a hitch for me.
You have 70 points. There might be a way to spend them in such a way that eliminating the remaining antithesis in the area would be possible.
I bit the inside of my cheek and slowly poked my head out again. There were a lot of aliens around, but one or two well-placed grenades could take out a number of them. Then my attention was drawn to one of the bridges spanning the distance between this building and another, wider across the street. The bridge itself was built like a sort of glass-roofed atrium, with twin rows of now empty planters inside it acting as rails as of a sort, except where a car-sized hole had been torn out. It was maybe 20 meters long, 5 wide, and jam-packed with aliens. Model 3s were sniffing about, Model 4s were stomping on the edge of to the edge of the hole, each carrying one or two bodies, and sometimes crates of food, or in one case, an entire rack of chips. The thing worrying me was the lumbering beast standing near to the entrance.
What's that one? I asked. A Model 6. They are uncommon this early in an incursion, but they will begin appearing with more regularity by nightfall. I would suggest avoiding direct confrontation. While your current weapons could injure it, it would require a great deal of luck to actually kill the model.
I could see why. The thing had 6 legs set around a long, thick body covered in nearly angular plates. It moved over a little to get out of the path of a pair of Model 4s carrying an entire vending machine. The vending machine gave me a sense of much needed scale. The Model 6 was nearly a meter and a half tall, easily. Its face was a boxy thing, 2 sets of eyes on either side, and a squarish jaw that was filled with flat-tipped teeth like some sort of camel.
What's its gimmick?
I asked as I slid back down.
The Model 6 serves as a heavier antithesis combat unit. They are also far more intelligent than most other models in the 1 to 10 ranges and will act as a sort of command unit. Listen carefully and you'll hear it issuing very basic orders.
I frowned, but did as she asked, tending an ear over to try and make out any unique sounds. There was the hum of wind pushing into the building, the sizzle of a fryer somewhere someone had left on, and the shuffle of aliens. Then I heard it, a faint but distinct whistle that warbled and shifted in the wind. I nodded.
Got it. So it'll need to be taken down along with the rest. It does give more points.
Great, I sighed as I pressed myself against the counter. I had to come up with a plan of some sort, but the only thing that came to mind was to fling explosives around and hope for the best, and that wasn't a plan. Or was it?
How tough do you think that bridge over there is? And can I afford a bomb big enough to take it out?
End chapter 30. Hello, Itzatai. Or do you prefer a tie? I know on Discord you're just a tie. Hello, Nugar. Thank you for joining me. I hope your town run was productive. Would either of you like a recap of anything or elucidation on any details that are currently being shown? The description for Model 3s and Model 4s should be covered by my hideous little drawings here. Which, as I mentioned earlier, the Model 4 drawing is kind of weak. I'm a bear. I've never been to anywhere that anything has tentacles before. I should go somewhere that has tentacles. Are tentacle things delicious? I could eat something with tentacles. I could eat anything. I'm a bear. Alright, I don't see any request for a recap, so we'll just press forward, shall we? Tentacle things are absolutely delicious. Interesting. I will keep that in mind and try and find a camper who brought tentacle things to eat. Chapter 1. The bigger they are.
They say they want to uplift humanity. Yeah, okay, sure, that's nice. And how do they go about it? Give us randos some space guns? Yeah, no, that's not uplift. Sure, they got other things going. Every so often a samurai will buy a blueprint and sell it to some corp or another. Usually it's the highest bidder. And then everyone gets expensive hover cars. It's all connecting, can't you see? They don't want to uplift us. They want to see what we do with their toys. And then they're going to steal our memes.
Fortune comment on the ET board 2021. Fortune. There was no time like the present, but there was also something to say about being ready. I made sure my trench maker was tucked up tight in the back of my pants, that the bulkier Sparrow was ready and had its safety off, and that the 4 grenades I'd bought, at 5 points each, they'd flung my point count down to 50, were bulging out of my pocket. When I'd asked for something that could break the bridge off the side of the building, my Alice had suggested something called a spatially locked graphene garret. It looked like a little cylinder with a thick black band around it, and according to my AI friend, it would absolutely fuck up the local architecture without actually exploding. I had other toys. One was a little 2 point thing that looked like a ping pong ball designed by Salvador Dali. It had a pretty red button on top, the sort that screamed "Press me" without needing any labels. My thumb squeezed the top of the ball and it started to vibrate in little bursts. Once a second, then twice, and shaking faster. A silent countdown. I flung the ball as hard as I could toward the far end of the cafeteria. It bounced off the ground once, then skidded across the floor until it stopped next to one of those wooden boxes used to hide trash cans. The ball glowed a deep red, then began to hiss. "Oh no, Sally, your leg! It's okay, we can make it! Help me up! You're bleeding out! What if they come?" I blinked as I listened to the terribly scripted discussion coming from the ball. "What?" I asked as I dipped back down. "The Mark I audio scent lure is meant to attract all sorts of antithesis, including those intelligent enough to parse basic human speech." Well, that was fucking terrifying. A Model 3 rushed over to the trash can and started sniffing around. Then a few more joined it. One of the Model 4s carried a body, dropped it, and came closer too. It was working, not perfectly. Some of the models were coming closer, but didn't join the huddle. Others just eyed things from afar. That was good enough for me. I just needed them distracted for a moment. Reaching into a back pocket, I pulled out a grenade. It was just a ball with a tab above it. My Alice called it a directed chemical laser grenade. It was silent, which is what mattered to me. The grenade bounced and rolled, then slid off to the side of one of the Model 3s, stepped next to it. I ducked down and waited. The room lit up as if someone had just turned on the edgiest disco ball ever for a couple of seconds. No sound came, but the floor bounced and the faint scent of burning antithesis flesh waffled by. Now I just needed to finish the rest off. The Sparrow landed atop the counter with a clunk. One of the nearest Model 3s turned to stare my way. 4, maybe 5 of the aliens were on the ground, their sides sliced open and still smoking. Others had straight line burns as well, but were still standing. I'd fix that in a moment. "Die, bitch!" I said. I would need to work on my one-liners later. The bulky SMG spat out a dozen rounds that stitched their way into a Model 3. I didn't stop to watch it die, instead turning the gun over to the next lone model. Another bark from the gun, and a Model 4 was torn to shreds. The large group around the lure started to turn my way. I greeted them by emptying my mag in a line that cut through the entire group. Some of them were missed outright, and others only got a glancing blow, but I saw a couple flinch back as 2 or 3 rounds punched through them. The Sparrow clicked empty, so I pushed it aside, spun on one heel, and ran into the back store of the restaurant, the door into the employees only section slamming shut behind me. My plan was fairly simple. I figured that was the best way to carry out a plan without it blowing up in my face. I raced through tight corridors behind the shops while pulling out my trench maker. When I saw a familiar double-arched logo on one door, I pressed into its shoulder first and barged into a room filled with the scent of burning oil and processed mock chicken. The moment I was behind the till, I glanced over to the side where I'd been killing Xenos. A few of them were missing, back in the Thai place I'd been in already. It didn't matter. I lunged over the counter and sprinted towards the bridge. There were more aliens there, some of them turning my way, distracted away from their work, flinging bodies down onto the streets below. I tucked my gun under my stump and held it in place with my armpit. Then I pulled out the first of my 3 Garrett grenades. Yanking the pin out with my teeth, I flung it as hard and as far as I could, and watched it sail over the heads of a dozen aliens. I had always had a good arm. The next came out just as the large Model 6 whistled and every alien in the area started to move back toward me. I flicked the second grenade underhand. It bounced to a stop just a meter or so past the entrance of the bridge. Perfect. The grenade froze in midair a foot off the ground. The black band around it popped off, sending 2 metal bits skittering across the floor a moment before the device started to make a whining noise. A thin black circle appeared around it, first only a few centimeters wide, then larger and larger. One of the passing Xenos set its leg through the blackened circle. Its leg was chopped into 100 wafer-thin layers, sending the rest of its body crashing through the spinning blender of a monomolecular razor ribbon. The circle expanded more until it was eating through the walls and ceiling in the bridge, turning them into faint dust. Through the haze, I saw a piece of the bridge at the far end fall to the ground. That would do. My last Garrett grenade was flung over to a group of Xenos running over to me. It would give them something to play with while I ran. The entire building creaked as the far end of the bridge gave out, and the sudden stress on the closer end, coupled with the torn-up section of my old pal Gravity, did the rest. Just as everything went down, a huge black form leapt into the cafeteria. The Model 6 was missing a leg, and it was covered in scrapes and cuts, but its 4 beady eyes still fixed onto me. I found myself with a strong urge to get the hell away. End chapter 31. I wonder if the part about having a good arm is a joke about her having only one arm. I guess it would be. This Model 6 is very durable. I wonder how a bear would fare against them. I'm kidding, I don't wonder. The bear would win. Chapter 32. Fried. Newbie samurai are the best. They're still fresh and gullible. You can sign them up for all sorts of contracts, no problem. A salesman's last words during a live interview moments before being beaten by Emerald. June 2026. The Model 6 was a big, mean motherfucker. I vaulted over the counter of a burger joint, skidded along a greasy floor with shoes that had no grip, and swung around while whipping my trenchmaker out. A quick count showed 6, maybe 7 aliens, the Model 6 at their head. I had 10 rounds in my gun and maybe a 5-second head start. The first shot took a Model 3 in the chest. The next buried itself in the mess of tentacles before a Model 4. Every shot had me turning a little, placing the red dot of the reticule over the next monster in line. Not all of them died, but the incendiary rounds did some nasty shit to their insides even when they were hitting some meaty bit. I didn't get to enjoy seeing the aliens burn up. Putting 2 rounds more or less center mass on the Model 6 was easy. It was a big bastard, and it was getting close. Seeing those 2 rounds sputter and burn in its chest like matches in a windstorm was a lot harder. Shit, 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 I said as I turned on a heel and ran deeper into the back of the burger joint. My Alice, grenade! I shoved my trench maker in a pocket where it stuck out halfway and thumped against my side with every step. Resonator Mark 1D. You should be familiar with this one. Something cold and hard appeared in my hand. I reached up, bit the tab off, and slammed my thumb over the trigger before flinging the grenade over my shoulder as hard as I could. Then, just as I was coming around the back, something heavy punched me in the kidneys, and I went tumbling forwards to land on my knees and side. I grunted as my back bumped into a counter, and a bag full of burger buns came raining down atop me. The Model 6 was squeezing into the back store, its wide body too large to fit properly, but it was still shoving its way in, machines being shoved aside with every step. I gritted my teeth, tried to pretend I couldn't feel the ache in my back, and jumped to my feet. The resonator went off, filling the cafeteria with a chilling scream that had me wincing and made the alien before me shiver. It didn't kill it, though, not with the first blast. The damned thing was still coming. I looked around in a hurry, picked up a pan, then decided that banging it on the monster's head would do a whole lot of nothing. Then I saw a fryer. I dipped the pan into hot oil, took it out, and flung the oil at the Model 6's face. The Model 6 twitched back, head beating from side to side as its eyes and skin sizzled and started to smell like fries. The resonator rang again, then again, and the Model 6's twitching turned into writhing, and even though my head was ringing, I still made sure to stare as the monster melted. When I started to see bones sticking out of the creature's sloughing skin, I stepped back, made sure my trenchmaker was still at hand, then I got onto my knees to fish it out from under a counter.
Any left? I asked. None that I've noticed. Do you want to see your point gains?
I backed up into one of the corridors behind the burger place, then slumped against the nearest wall while my heart calmed down. I passed my hand over my lower back. It wasn't bleeding or anything, or even painful. Were the drugs I'd taken still acting?
Sure, I said.
Targets eliminated. Reward 265 points. I blinked at the number.
Damn, I said. A respectable amount. I would suggest spending them sooner rather than later. Waiting until you are safe might mean never getting to safety.
I licked my lips.
Yeah, fine. What's my total at? 320.
I huffed in surprise.
Damn, I could probably buy a couple of nice things with that, I said. I would suggest immediately buying a few select medical utilities. A second nano-regenerative suite just to ensure that you're in better health. A NutriPack to keep you going, as well as a cleanse to rid you of the remaining as well as a cleanse to rid you of the remains of the Mind Crank Ultra you've taken. It's reached the point where it's acting as something of an impairment.
I nodded.
Sounds like a start. Let's get it done before we're going to meet the others.
I coughed to clear my throat, then wiggled my pinky in my ear.
I need a few things. Something to reload my gun and a holster for it. And I need, more firepower, I guess.
That Model 6 had taken a lot to kill. It was probably worth more points for it, but the level of danger compared to a 3 or 4 was too damned much.
I suspect that you need many things, if you want to continue fighting as you have, that is. By laying out plans, setting up traps, and then taking down opponents in large groups, then perhaps you may want to split your investments in a few ways. Additional firepower, more mobility, better sensor capabilities, and finally more advanced stealth systems. You won't be a vanguard who charges in the front lines, but you may be one of those rescuing the people caught in the crossfires. That sounds nice, yeah.
It did sound kind of cool.
Perhaps we should begin with auxiliary weapon utilities class 1. You could purchase autoloaders targeting computers, basic mounted weaponry, and a few other utilities besides. 50 points for the entire catalog.
End chapter 32. Fries are delicious. I don't get to eat them very often because people who drive into the forest with fries are rare. And even then, they're usually cold. I'm told they're much better hot. By told, I mean I guessed. Guessing is all I really have. Chapter 33. The Perfect Fit.
Fashion among samurai is a quick-moving and vicious thing. Most low-tier samurai will change outfits and styles at the drop of a hat, sometimes literally. The mass market appeal requires that they stand out, at least a little, from those that came before. That's why you'll see such wild styles being adopted by some. The rise of entire sites dedicated to judging the fashion sense of some samurai, and the shaming of shamurai or those samurai who go too far with their style. The tabloids around them, and the way that the clothing companies are quick to copy any interesting fashion on display, has led to a sort of strange competition. Most of the established samurai, strangely enough, don't seem to care as much about it. By the time they've gotten that far into their careers, they've usually figured out the look and style they want to adopt. Edith Rockwell, leading clothing designer, Nibbletainment Incorporated, 2032. New purchase, undershoulder auto-loading holster, Mark 1. Points reduced to 224. I stared at the box waiting for me on the ground, right next to a couple of other boxes that I'd kicked around. My Alice had convinced me to get healed up properly before moving on, then she got me to buy a juice box. I sucked at the little straw sticking out of the 1-point drink until my cheeks caved in. It was, hands down, the best drink I'd ever had. Both sweet and savory, with a bit of a citrusy tang to it, and it left me with an aftertaste as if I'd just bitten into one of those really expensive organic apples Lucy and I had once stolen from the better part of the city. Point was, alien food was the best and worth every point. I can never give any of this to Lucy, I said as I yoinked the straw out of the box, then tipped it over for one last drop. I can't see how it would be bad for her. It would be bad for me. She'd never stop nagging me for more, and then she'd go full puppy dog eyes on me and fake cry, and I'd fold like a stack of cards. She'd drain away my points in an afternoon. Learning that my vanguard is susceptible to attractive young women looking pitiful is rather distressing. I snorted. I didn't ask you to get jammed in my head, I said. Now let's see this thing. I could get used to opening up boxes only to find new toys in them. It beat the hell out of literally any Christmas ever. The best we ever got were some really nice school supplies from a samurai-run charity one year. And as cool as they'd been, they'd still been school supplies. The lid came off with a dull thwap, and I flung it aside without a care to reveal a sort of jacket thing. I pulled the autoloader out of the case and held it up. There were 2 holes for arms with elbow-length sleeves and a zipper at the front. The entire thing only reached down to the lower ribs, though, more like a half jacket than a jacket proper. Shrugging, I set it aside, tore off my own shitty gray coat, and left it on the ground. The thing had a fist-sized hole in it already. It was finished one way or another. Putting on the autoloader was a little tricky. It had pockets on the back and 2 boxes tucked just under the arms, over and over pouch-like openings. It looked pretty sleek, though, like a custom-made leather coat. Place your gun in one of the holsters. I did as my Alice asked and brought my trench maker into the right side holster. The entire thing squeezed around the gun like a vacuum seal in less time than it took to blink. I had to tug at it to pull it out. Cool, I said. What about the loading? Touch an empty magazine to the box below your arm. I would suggest buying a few. Sure, give me The gun was empty as it was, and there were 4 pockets at the back of the autoloader. I imagined they would seal up the same way. 5 magazines, all incendiary. You really do like those rounds. Perhaps you should try something else. The trench maker can use micro-missiles, sabot rounds, explosives, and many other loadouts. Just incendiaries for now, I said. Some of those had sounded damned tempting. New purchase, 45 armor-piercing incendiary magazine. 5 units. Points reduced to 214. 5 fresh magazines appeared next to the empty box before me. I took one and tapped it to the little slim box under my armpit. A trio of little arms unfolded themselves from the box, grabbed the magazine in little pinchers, then rotated around and behind me where I couldn't see them, even looking over my shoulder. They slotted the magazine into one of the back pockets and then slid back into place. Cool, I said. I watched the little arms slot away 3 more magazines, then I stuffed my trench maker into place. The little arms got to work right away, tossing the empty magazine to the ground and fitting in a new one in under 2 seconds. Nice. I looked down at myself, then nodded. It even looks kind of cool. Does it come in colors that aren't black? It does. You may pick next time. I didn't think it would matter. I perked an eyebrow. Which colors can I pick from? Which hex code is your favorite? I
Never mind, just curious. I have your measurements, so it should fit quite comfortably.
I blinked, then felt inside of the autoloader. It was nice and padded. A quick zip, then some bouncing up and down, and revealed a few important things.
When you said measurements, you weren't kidding.
If I gained any weight, the damn thing wouldn't fit, but it didn't encumber my breathing or anything.
Is there anything else you need? I think this will do for now,
I said. How much time had I just wasted playing dress up with cool guns? I shook my head, considering putting on my torn up jacket, then gave up on that. I probably looked a mess with my black half jacket and torn up and bloody clothes. But I looked like a dangerous mess, and that was a fashionable enough statement for me. I considered tossing everything in the trash, then gave up on that idea. The whole building was filled with dead aliens. It probably didn't matter all that much that I'd left some junk on the ground.
Time to go see if the others are still alive,
I said. End chapter 33. I've never worn clothes besides hats. Do I have a hat still? Let's see if there are any hats laying around. Hat. Whoops. Just my old mining helmet. How does it look? I like this helmet. Well, now that I'm dressed, we can press on. Chapter 34. Rule.
If you look at a bird's eye view of the first 48 hours of an incursion, you'll be surprised to see how they spread. We imagine the spread as a sort of flood stemming from the center and going out, but in reality, just like the plants they are, the antithesis move a little more organically. The initial incursion and spread is relatively contained but concentrated in a few areas. 5-6 square kilometers of highly concentrated hive mass for the first dozen hours, then they push out in a ring, a huge burst of expansion starting usually a day after the initial landing. That circle of expansion stops, new ground is consolidated, and then a third wave moves out. Some people compare it to breathing, and they wouldn't be entirely wrong. The process ebbs and flows, but it isn't constant. The amount of resistance they meet will often dictate the speed of the spread.
Professor Heinlein. Excerpt from a lecture on the knowledge gained from early antithesis studies, thereafter called alien anthropology. 2028. I came down to find the dozen or so office drones. Elisa and Storm all just waiting around. There was a listlessness to them, like how I imagined people that knew they were dead would see the world. They turned towards me when I pushed the door open with a shoulder. I got a lot of stares, which wasn't entirely new. I was a one-armed cyclops with a few strange scars and a tiny bit of an attitude problem. Getting stared at was pretty damn routine. "You're all still kicking?" I asked. Storm pushed off the pillar he was leaning against. "We are," he said. "How did things go above?"
"There was a whole fuckload of aliens. We're being the important bit here. If we hurry, we should be able to make it up without any trouble."
I pointed my thumb toward the ceiling.
"Are you guys up for a bit of a jog?"
I got that they weren't into the whole physical exercise thing, and who could blame them, but they didn't need to look like I just asked them to take apart a puppy in a puppy kicking contest.
"Come on, you can either get moving or stay here and turn into alien chow."
That got them moving with a bit more alacrity. As one big group, we trudged up the stairs, then spilled out into the back room for the next floor up. I had to admit I enjoyed the wide-eyed looks they gave to the dozens of pulped, melted, and torn-up aliens dotting the cafeteria. What was less enjoyable was seeing knee-high birds pecking at some of the corpses and occasionally taking bites with razor-lined beaks.
"What are those?" I muttered. "Model 1s. They become quite often common a few hours after the start of an incursion, and will no doubt soon be the most populous antithesis variant in the region. Their threat is negligible, though they can still be dangerous in large numbers." "Can I shoot them?" I asked.
Certainly, it might serve to scare them off. I pulled my trenchmaker out of its holster and paused to aim. I knew there was this whole thing with placing your feet just so and aiming down the sights, and I did try a little, but I figured doing what felt comfortable was better. Or maybe I was crippling my ability to actually hit anything. I squinted, lined the reticule over one of the bigger crow-like birds, then bit the tip of my tongue before squeezing the trigger. The Model 1 exploded in a burst of guts, strange feathers, and fire. Oh yeah, I said. The others had flinched back, but they didn't seem ready to protest, especially not when all the other Model 1s took to the air and flew off in a hurry. Target eliminated. Reward 1 point. That's kind of pathetic, I said. Model 1s can be killed by the hundreds, and quite easily at that. Giving more than 1 point each would encourage bad habits among the vanguard. I said before looking to the survivors. Well, let's keep moving. Storm nodded from his spot at the head, and soon the rest of the group was off again and circling around any bodies along the way. The next stairwell up was meant to bring up to the parking lot. It was the home stretch, and none of those with me seemed ready to step in. A peek through the glass in the door showed working security lights that bathed everything in red. Opening the door and aiming around revealed a fair load of nothing. I'll head up first, I said. The climb was anticlimactic. Just a few stairs up to the landing up the top. No aliens, no bodies. It's clear, I called down before moving down to the door into the next floor. There was a barricade just beyond it, boxes stacked atop each other with chairs and desks behind that. I swung the door open and waited next to it out of the line of fire. Who's there? Someone called. I felt my shoulders slumping in relief. I'm Cat, I said as I brought my hand around to wave. Cute, one-armed samurai. You should know me, I hope. I poked my head around and found a nervous 20-something in the all-cop security uniform, looking through a hole in the wall of junk. Oh, yeah. We can move some things. Cool, I said. We've got a dozen others here and that Storm guy. Storm and Jeff made it? He asked. Yeah, great. I'll tell Simmons and get some help for this wall. Just give me a minute. I sighed. Really, though, I couldn't complain too much. I was so close to seeing the kittens and Lucy again. Then we'd figure out a way to get the hell out of the center of the incursion. Simmons showed up on the other side of the barricade just as the others started to come up. Some of them had pulled some chairs out of the stack to sit on, but others were quick to complain about not being able to get past. Captain, Simmons said, you got my men back. I winced a bit. I got one of them back, I said. Simmons met my eye. Better than none. Come on in, we've got a few things to discuss. I'm sure I'll enjoy the conversation, I deadpanned. Humans saved, 11. Points added. New total, 226. End chapter 34. Oh, back to trying to do Simmons. Chapter 35, Death Flags. Samurai die. Just gotta pick a most dramatic moment. The late Silver Hound's final words before the detonation of a low-yield nuclear charge in the center of the Syrian Level 4 incursion of 2034. We need you to help with the AA system, Simmons said. I raised an eyebrow at him, but the man didn't so much as blink. In the end, I broke eye contact first and looked over to where some of his security guards were rebuilding the barricade I'd just passed. Didn't you have some IT guys that could get the anti-air back on? I asked. I did. We sent 2 of them up. They're dead. I felt my nose scrunching in distaste. Are there more Xenos on the upper floors? I asked. There are more Xenos, period. Model 1s have started to flock around. If we leave now, we won't be just dealing with a few large flyers, but entire flocks of those little shits, he said. If we can get the AA to work, it'll at least serve as a distraction. He placed a hand on my shoulder and pulled me to the side just as a few survivors moved past with some wheels that looked like they'd been torn off the undercarriage of a hover car. The older man reached into one of the pockets of his vest and pulled out a small phone, one of the fancy sorts with a holoprojector. He fiddled with it for a moment, then projected a 3D map of New Montreal. He pointed to one building, a bit shorter than those around it, but still respectably tall. "That's us," he said. Then he pointed to something about 10 blocks down, where the buildings started to lose some of their height. "Sent some of my boys up there with rangefinders. This is more or less where the front lines are. If we move straight south, we'll be moving over the army in about 15 blocks. It's not too far, a kilometer, maybe 1.5.
How big is the incursion?
I asked.
Based on the time since its start, the landing point of the main antithesis bodies, and the position of the armed forces on that map, my simulation suggests a 5 kilometer wide circle.
I touched my ear with my hand.
So 5 clicks in diameter, that's 30 kilometers square? My vanguard is bad at math. That is rather shameful. The surface of a circle can be calculated by taking pi and multiplying it by the radius squared. I don't need to know how to do the math, I said. I need the answer.
The AI sighed in my head.
It's approximately 20 kilometers square. Since you don't seem to care about the math, I suppose big round numbers will have to do. Would you accept multiples of 5, or should I stick to multiples of 10 for you?
I rolled my eye.
Okay, so it's pretty big, and not that huge yet. And we're not in the dead center.
I rubbed at my neck.
We get the AA on, we distract the local beasties, then we make a run for it. And hope that we can cover a couple of clicks without turning into Xeno Chow.
The terrain complicates things a little. We can't make a straight line dash to the nearest military position, but we can probably make it there in under 2, maybe 3 minutes of flight time. There's little traffic out there. So far, the plan was okay. There was just one very big, very glaring problem.
So when I turn on the AA, they're on for good, right?
That's right.
Which means we'll have to leave then and there.
Simmons nodded.
Then how in the fuck will I get out?
I asked. The man shifted and for once didn't meet my eye. "You're a clever girl. You'll figure it out, I'm certain."
You're sending me to die?
I asked. "I'm sending you to save all these people," he said while pointing into the parking garage. A glance over showed kids being loaded into buses, adults tossing things out of hover cars to lighten them, and a few passing out what might be makeshift weapons in the forms of clubs and metal bars. My eye caught on Lucy's familiar form way off at the back. She was smiling, big and proud, while she made wild gestures through the air around her that always ended with her hands snapping back down to make sure her crutches didn't fall. Mary was just before her, listening intently, but also blushing furiously. Lucy was no doubt pushing the boundaries of what the girl thought of as acceptable.
Are you sending me alone?
I asked. "Can you manage alone?" he asked. "The last 3 I sent, as a group, they got to the top floor, but didn't make it to the platform before one of them said something about birds. They went MIA right after."
I glared at nothing. I'm going to say bye to the kittens, I said.
I brushed past Simmons only for the man to grab me by the stump. "Are you going to do it?" he asked.
Yeah, I'll do it. Touch me again and I don't know, shoot you or something.
He let go. "Thank you. Contact me when you set out. I'll make sure everything is ready to go."
Yeah,
I said. My steps felt a little weird as I moved towards Lucy and the others.
there is no need to worry so much. The plan you concocted has a higher than average chance of succeeding, and you're my vanguard. I'll make sure that you're equipped for combat out in the open. I'm certain you'll survive. Your confidence is inspiring, I told my Alice. I do try.
I reached Lucy, cutting her off in the middle of a story that I recognized as one of the times we'd been caught doing things we shouldn't have.
Cat?
She asked. "I like your jacket." I pulled her into a one-armed hug and tucked my head into the crook of her neck.
Just give me a minute, I said.
Lucy, being Lucy, hugged back. End chapter 35. I want to take off the helmet now. Goodbye, helmet. How's everyone up there doing? I'm going to assume you're all fine. Chapter 36. A Matter of Trust. There are people, real weirdos, who are actual fans of the antithesis, that make costumes and symbols, and they argue over the facts about them online. They've got bug sonas. Those really deep in those circles worship the aliens. They see them as some sort of divine punishment or some sort of underdog alien. It doesn't usually make sense. We're happy to leave them to their own beliefs most of the time. They're rather harmless. Sergeant O'Malley, New York, NYPD. A week before the pro antithesis bombing campaign that took his life, January 2049. Oh, my chat died. I'm really starting to hate stairs, I said. Then kill enough antithesis and save enough people that you can afford a flight system. I rolled my eye. Is that your solution to everything? I asked. Of course not. It's a solution to most things. Uh-huh, I said. What's the retirement plan for Samurai anyway? A vanguard can stop assisting against the antithesis at any time, though you'd need to survive with your monthly allowance of points, which is a negligible amount. I hummed as I started taking the steps two at a time. The faster I could get to the roof, the faster Lucy and the kittens would be out of here. And then I'd figure something out. I've got 2 questions, I said. I'm always listening. Creepy. Creepy. First, should I be getting something? I don't know, armor or better gear? And second, the AA installation. Will I need anything for it? It's quite possible that you'll need some sort of interfacing tool to connect to a Vanguard design system. As for your equipment, yes, you definitely need better equipment. So far, every tool you purchased has been, in a word, lackluster and of low quality. A proper handgun would cost hundreds of points, armor the same. The issue is that your point total is quite low. Spending it all now on mediocre equipment would make obtaining better equipment later difficult. I scratched at my chin and reached the top as I reached the top of the stairwell. I get what you're saying, yeah, but I don't mind taking things slow if it means living. Actually, I did kind of mind. I'd grown to hate the subpar crap we were always given at the orphanage. I wanted some the nicer things right off the bat, but I also wanted to live. Setting aside my preferences to not get gored was totally alright in my book. Then again, not picking a fight was the best way to win a fight, in my experience. I need stealth shit, I said, and something to compensate for my terrible aim. Purchasing stealth equipment is an excellent idea, although I'm afraid that most of it will be beyond you for the moment. Basic stealth systems class 1 costs 100 points. From there, you could purchase something like a stealth overcoat, which would serve as a decent disguise for 50 points. All right, I said. But that doesn't help my aim much, I said. True. I would then suggest 2 more utilities. You are in dire need of a better augmentation system, but seeing as how that isn't available at the moment, not without spending points on things that aren't immediately useful, perhaps a basic targeting system Mark I from your auxiliary weapon utilities class 1 for 20 points, and then a Hydra autonomous targeting mount for 100 points. What's that last thing? I asked. It's a mounted mechanical system that essentially holds onto a firearm of your choice. It can aim and fire it using either line of sight targeting or a more complex targeting computer. Am I still live? I hope so. Bitrate's good. And then I'd need to buy the gun on top of that, I said. Indeed. Maybe I should have retrieved that sparrow I'd tossed earlier. It could be saving me a few points. I'm willing to give it a try, I said as I pushed past the door at the top of the stairwell and slid uh, into a long corridor. I was getting way too used to the damn building. Let's start with the additional firepower. Being harder to see and hit was nice and all, but I wanted to be able to hit back. Just to confirm, you want the basic targeting system Mark I and the Hydra autonomous targeting mount. I nodded. Yeah, they both sound useful. They'll help, right? Most things in the catalogs are meant to help in one way or another. I am merely trying to hint that perhaps you should spend more time perusing your options before accepting the first thing I offer. I dropped my voice to a low whisper. I didn't want to alert everything around me that I was there. Aren't you supposed to be picking out the best things for me anyway? I asked. Always. Your profile didn't suggest you were this trusting of authority. I stopped near an intersection and looked around the corner before answering. That answer came in the form of a shrug. I don't know. You don't feel like some corporal drone or one of the volunteers at the orphanage. You feel like you? Had the AI been doing something to ingratiate herself? Itself? I guessed so. She even said that she was talking and joking with me to get me to lower my guard. I guess it had worked. I appreciate it, truly. And yes, while I am trying to guide your development with an eye towards long-term gains, I also want to see you doing well in the short term. Very sappy, I said. Did my profile tell you how much I hate sappy shit? There is a note that your behavior during the filming of some commercials and PR events centered around the more disabled members of your orphanage was subpar. I could infer from there. I snorted. Give me new toys and then let's keep moving. New purchase. Basic targeting system Mark 1. Points reduced to 06. New purchase. Hydra autonomous targeting mount. Points reduced to 106. I took in the two boxes below me, one small enough to fit on my palm, the other long enough than my arm and nearly a foot thick and tall. I opened the smaller one first to find a small device, L-shaped with intricate little projectors and some bits that I didn't recognize. Press the longer section over your temple. The round ball at the end of the other bar should touch the bridge of your nose. I caught on soon enough. It was basically a sort of square half-rim monocle that stuck to my skin as if glued on. The moment it was in place, the projectors fired up and I now had a HUD over my HUD. That's going to be annoying, I said. You'll get used to it, I suspect. It's mostly there to track your eye's motion, and its hardware will do a lot of the work that your current gear can't. It will make more sense once you equip other new pieces of gear. I shrugged and tried to ignore the impression that I had a lock of hair tickling my nose where the targeting system was pressed. The second, bigger box had a much cooler toy. Ooh, I said. Then I started grinning. End chapter 36. How are we doing out there, chat? Am I still with you? I suppose if I was asking that and I wasn't with you, you wouldn't know. I'm going to assume everything is going fine. Chapter 37. Armed and ready. The human form is far from perfect, especially against something like the Antithesis, who take biological weaponry to an entirely new level with each iteration. Now, keeping that in mind, you might wonder how the Vanguard, the ones who are accountable for the most Antithesis kills, manage against such large numbers. The truth is, for them, the form to which they are born isn't the end. Additional limbs, cybernetic upgrades, or even just exoskeletal augmentations. The variations are innumerable. But the essence of it all is that the Vanguard learned quickly that being human isn't enough, so they become more. Essay by Professor Verns of the French Académie des Sciences Extraterrestres, May 2032. I had to strip down from my jacket, shirt, and bra to put on my newest piece of gear. Even then, it was a little bulky and cumbersome to put on, but on twisting around to see if the reflection of my back in the glass, it was totally worth it. The Hydra autonomous targeting mount was a long, sleek piece of blue metal with overlapping plates that ran all the way from the small of my back to the base of my neck, with two little arms fitting over my collar. It even had faint pinkish highlights glowing from behind each plate. The biggest part of it over it were two curved bits over my shoulder blades. It stuck to my back, warm and not quite wet. each articulated joint pressed close to me and moving with the shifting of my spine and hips. It would make wearing a shirt a pinch awkward, so I left the tattered remains of my t-shirt on the floor and slid my autoloader jacket on instead. The Hydra raised the two boxy parts up as I put my jacket on, then lowered them back down over the jacket. Two little arms sneaking out from just behind my neck to hold everything in place.
Right, how does this work? I asked. It is already synced with your targeting software. Bring a weapon to a point 5 centimeters above your shoulder.
I zipped up my jacket, then pulled my trench maker and held it over my shoulder. The box over my right shoulder unfolded, a little arm reached up and grabbed the gun's grip in a pair of clamps, while a smaller, more articulate tendril gripped onto the trigger. There was a little camera set up, tied to the arms, no doubt meant to aim.
Cool,
I said. I looked around, and the trench maker moved with my motions, aiming where I was looking.
The software has target designation systems that allow it to pick targets based on a priority system. I would suggest buying a pair of guns specifically made for the articulated system. While it can use standard arms, it isn't as efficient or as accurate.
All right, I said as I reached up. The arm deposited the trench maker in my hand, then folded itself away in less time than it took to blink. It was really fucking cool.
What kind of guns do you have for these babies?
I was really digging having 3 arms. It was better than my usual one.
Seeing as how you still have a decent number of points, 2 Model 1 Lance jets would cost you 40 points. They fire gyroscopically stabilized micro-rockets, which means little recoil and decent accuracy. They use drum magazines with 60 rounds each that can be magnetically attached to your mounting along your back for rapid reloading. Do they explode or light things on fire? I asked. That could cost you more per magazine, but it could be arranged.
I nodded, a stupid grin pulling at my lips.
Nice. We've been kind of wasting time. Let's buy the toys and hurry off. How many extra magazines?
How many can I fit? I asked as I ran my hand over my back. Feeling cold metal there was a bit strange.
Is this thing armored? A little, and you can fit 8. They'll cost 3 points each. Do it.
New purchase, Lance Jet Model 1, 2 units. Points reduced to 116. New purchase, magazine of high explosive flechettes, 8 units. Points reduced to 92. A case appeared at my feet instead of the usual cheap box. For a moment I wondered if I'd gotten the wrong package, but opening the case revealed 2 boxy gun-like things and 8 cylindrical magazines with flattened sides to them. I picked up one of the magazines and tried to bring it over my shoulder. The mounting behind my back unfolded and snapped the magazine away, then slotted away against one of the plates over my back.
All right,
I said as I started passing the device all of the magazines, one by one. Then I handed over the gun. The little boxy arms slid into the bottom of the gun, then locked in place with the zip of a drill spinning up. The gun twisted this way and that, then came to hover over my shoulder. I was grinning as I picked up the second one and moved it over my other shoulder.
They can reload themselves?
I asked.
Of course.
I could get used to having all of these toys. And getting all these toys.
Right, let's move on,
I said as I pushed the case aside. Having 2 guns the size of one of those energy drink cans twitching next to my head was a little strange. It kept making me look to the side whenever it slipped into my vision, but it was also damned cool, so I wasn't going to complain. I moved on, feeling a little more confident in my step. I still had some points to spend, but not all that much time to spend them in. Maybe if I was going to be stuck here after the others left. I set that thought aside. The little burning kernel of betrayal I felt was entirely misplaced. The next stairwell up had me reaching the museum proper. It was a little strange, stepping back into the same corridor where we'd hidden the vault. Less strange was seeing well over a dozen Model 1s pecking at the bodies we'd left behind. Antithesis or human, I pulled back around a corner and gripped my teeth.
How do I fire these things?
I asked.
Use your new sensor. Look to the corner with the targeting reticule, then let the system pick out its targets. Saying fire will do the obvious. I can also control parts of it for you if you're otherwise too busy.
I looked around until I spotted the symbol in a corner of my vision. Looking up at it for just a moment made the projected screen before me glow a faint pinkish color. The moment I poked my head around the corner, little red dots appeared on all of the Model 1s. I stepped out of cover.
Fire!
End chapter 37. I wonder if I could benefit from 2 more bare arms, or 2 more bare legs. Could I run faster? Maybe I'd just be more Molly capable. I think I'm fine. The bare form is perfect in all of its applications. No need for extra limbs. I don't even have guns to hold. I suppose if it would let me hold guns, I might actually wear clothes. Let's move on. Chapter 38. Flesh Melter. Are you a true-blooded blue American? Are you a red-blooded patriot? Do you want to see those roach bastards take over this fine country, steal your children, and enslave humanity? If you want to help real Americans, then buy samurai bonds today. A certain percentage of every bond purchase will go directly into the pockets of America's heroes. Propaganda from the United States of Kentucky, Texas, and Oklahoma, late 2035. I pulled out my trench maker just in case. It wasn't needed in the end. The 2 guns hovering close to my head both twitched, each picking out a target at the far end of a flock of black-green birds. 2 flechettes flew out of the guns with shots that sounded more like a pneumatic hose being disconnected than an actual gunshot. The birds exploded in a mess of feathers and gore. Just as the Model 1s started to react, the guns twitched, picking out new targets and firing again. There was nearly a half second between picking out a new target and firing. It wasn't a big enough delay for the Model 1s to do anything. I watched the pile of black bodies on the ground, some of them smoking, where the explosive flechettes had burned fist-sized holes into their little bodies.
Damn,
I said.
I trust the display is satisfactory enough. Best 100 points I've ever spent,
I said, and it was. It was the kind of firepower I could get for just shy of, it was the kind of firepower I could get for just shy of 100 points. I couldn't imagine what kind of stuff old samurai got to play with after a year or two. Targets eliminated. Reward 14 points. I shrugged. It was something. I wouldn't refuse them.
My Alice, I need something to burn those bodies with,
I said.
It's a fairly common practice with higher tier Vanguard to attempt to starve out a fledgling hive. There are a few items in your esoteric single-use explosive devices catalog that would do the job. I would suggest a Mark I flesh melter. They cost 3 points. Very slow acting and more of a utility than a proper weapon. Sure, why not?
New purchase. Mark I Flesh Melter. Points reduced to 103. The flesh melter I won looked like a soda can. It had a pop tab at the top and the name and model number on the side in etched numbers. I popped the top and tossed it into the room, then ducked to the side where a wall would cover me. A lot of nothing happened.
The Flesh Melter Mark I releases short-lived nanites that find any organic materials and break them apart. I would not advise stepping within 10 meters of the deployment range of the grenade.
I shuddered and thanked the stars I had ducked to the side. I had to walk down and not the other. Otherwise, I would have had to cross the opening.
My Alice? Yes, Catherine? Next time you give me something so stupidly dangerous, please tell me. The majority of your purchases so far have been exceedingly lethal to anyone with a standard human physiology. Yeah, but they're not flesh-eating nanites,
I said. I shivered again and moved away from the vault. The museum had turned into something of a mess in the hour or two since I'd left. Just thinking that it had only been a little bit since I'd been pinned under a pole in this room left me a queasy feeling in my gut. I shook my head and set that aside too. The room's glass-lined ceiling was cracked and defaced in a few more spots. Water was dripping down from a dozen rents in the glass, and a deluge was pouring in from the hole where the pot had crashed at the far end. The constant hum of rain pelting onto the roof warred with the jingles and announcements from 3 dozen interactive displays that had been probably looping this entire time. I licked my lips and stayed near the entrance, eye panning this way and that while the guns at my sides scanned across the room.
So, big ol' AA gun on the roof, I said, which means we need to get to the roof. I would advise finding the interior access. While climbing to the roof from the exterior is possible, you would present a rather obvious and tantalizing target to any flying antithesis. While Model 1As are easy to ward off, the larger specimen of the Model 1 can be a much larger threat. Right, I said. So if I were a roof access thing, where would I hide? I started to cross the room, aiming for the entrance, where I could vaguely recall there being a room behind the great greeter android. Something shifted to the side. I turned to look, a hand reaching up for my gun in the same moment that something big and black burst out from a display, showing off a long black trench coat draped over a mannequin. A Model 3, one of its rear legs crushed and crippled, its eyes locked onto me, its mouth opening wide. I fumbled to grab my gun properly and find the trigger, and then the guns hanging off my back opened fire. One from just behind me, the other from atop my head, where it had stretched over to get a better angle. The Model 3 shook and trembled as a dozen projectiles burrowed into it. Then it burst apart, and the alien slumped to the ground while bits of its flesh and blood rained down around me. Fuck! Are you well? Yeah, I'm fine, I said. I just nearly pissed myself is all. Please don't do that. It would be embarrassing. Shut up, I said with no energy behind it.
Target eliminated. Rewards 10 points. New total 113 points. Well, at least there was that. I swallowed and continued making my way ahead, though this time at a much slower, more even pace. Every twitch and moving object in my periphery had me jumping until I took a moment to settle down. The android at the front, the one that had pissed me off so much, wasn't in the best shape. Something had plucked out its eyes and nipped at its plasticky skin until it peeled off to reveal the hard plastic shell beneath. I scrunched up my nose and vaulted over the counter, and with a final glance over my shoulder, moved into the bowels of the museum. End chapter 38. Seems like her shoulder guns are taking all the fun out of this. Well, maybe when she gets swarmed it'll be better. Chapter 39. Long Odds. There are all sorts of systems to determine the worth of a samurai. The internet has many of these, from ranks based on popularity to scales of theoretical power. The governments of the world have their own. They generally go from Tier 1 to 5, with a Tier 1 samurai being a samurai that can be used by the government, and a Tier 5 being one capable of demolishing that same group. Most corporations have adopted a much simpler phase system that goes from A to C with the occasional D. Excerpt from Understanding the Unknowable, a 2049 textbook. The door had a great big employees only sign across it. That part was easy to ignore. What wasn't was the heavy lock holding the door shut. I sighed and pulled my trenchmaker out from its holster, then backed up a couple of steps. I pinched my tongue between my lips and aimed down the sights atop the gun until it was nice and lined up. The 45 round toward a dollar coin-sized hole in the lock, a hole that glowed red and started to melt around the edges. A quick kick shoved open the door.
Man, I love these bullets, I said as I looked into the next room over. There are plenty of interesting types of ammunition that might interest you. I'll earmark a few for future testing.
Cool, I said as I was actually looking forward to it.
And maybe I could use an arm. I'm surprised it took you this long to ask. Your missing arm and eye are something of a hindrance.
Yeah, well, whatever, I said.
We'll find you a good one, though I think that in this case you might want to invest in something of a decent high quality. Perhaps a Class 2 prosthetic once you've obtained the points and tokens to unlock that kind of catalog.
Tokens? That was new.
Unlocking a Class 1 catalog is simple, and a Vanguard can go very far just by unlocking a number of these. but Class 2 and onwards have technologies that are beyond humanity's current capability to reproduce. They are commensurately more expensive, and each catalog requires a number of tokens to be unlocked. Think of them as signs that you've saved enough humans to earn technologies that could help potentially endanger your entire race.
That sounded like a shitty gimmick, and at the same time it made some sense. Giving the crazies the nukes was never a good idea.
Class 1 is good for smaller things, right? It's more than sufficient, I think, for most of the challenges you'll face. I would suggest aiming for Class 2 equipment in any field you truly wish to specialize in. A new arm, for example, will not need to be replaced as frequently if the first one you purchase is of high enough quality.
Right, right, I said. The employee-only area was a bit of a crapshoot. There were boxes lining the sides of the corridor, probably with stuff from the museum, and I passed a little warehouse area with large industrial shelves packed with crap that I didn't think was terribly important. And then I found another locked door. This one was thicker, with a whole lot more warning signs on it, and in its center, next to a symbol that warned that anyone passing the door without authorization would be fined, was a large logo.
Longbow to Industrial Weapons Technologies,
I read.
that sounds promising. The security around the door is Vanguard built.
I looked to the side where a flat stainless steel panel rested next to the door.
Think you can break in for me? I'm afraid not, but I can knock.
Knock? I asked.
The system is linked to a distant server, which is in turn linked to one of my siblings. I cannot ask them to open the door, but I can establish a connection to their Vanguard if they want it.
All right, I said.
Establishing and done. Now what?
I asked before looking around.
Can I shoot the door off its hinges yet?
That'd be a bit rude. I snapped around to stare at where the voice had come from. The panel next to the door had shifted, revealing an image of a man sitting in a darkened room filled with orange lights that shone down on a mixture of huge computers and shelves with little figurines. The man himself, was without a doubt a samurai. Every part of his face from the nose up was hidden behind a visor that looked like a flat steel plate with inset lights. He was leaning back into one of those gamer seats, one hand out of the screen and the other was fiddling with a lit cigarette.
The fuck are you?
I asked. The man grinned. Calm your tits, sis. I'm Big Bro Longbow. He gestured in my direction with his cigarette. You're the one who knocked. What's up? I don't recognize you. Also, what happened to your face?
I'm Cat,
I said. Then I glared for good measure.
and my face got blown up a bit. Took my eye and arm.
Nah, there's already like 3 cats already, he said. Sorry, little sis, that one's taken. He pulled something from the side, and a large keyboard slid into view atop a sort of gantry. He stuffed his cigarette in his mouth, and his hands burst apart into a panoply of smaller mechanized fingers that stabbed into the board faster than I could see.
Middle of an incursion, huh? Oh, you're not a cat, you're a kitten. That name's not taken if you want. Also, check out Class 1 Biosculpting. You'll look better in no time. Fuck no, I said to both.
Right, well, you'll find something before the trolls giving you a name is my advice. So why'd you call? I'm a bit busy, you know.
I'm.
I shook my head. This was beyond strange. Samurai were supposed to be big, like celebrities, above the normal masses, and this skinny guy sitting God knows where was just chill.
I'm new. Really new, I said. I'm trying to get my friends out of this building. We wanted to turn on the AA on the roof, use it as a distraction to get out of here.
Huh, Longbow said.
Right, right, I can see. You know that AA system is like 30K points.
My heart sank. You owe me a drink one of these days, all right?
What?
He tilted his head a little. What?
You'll turn it on?
I asked. I mean, it's that or let you die or whatever, so yeah. I'll make a few points before the bugs get to it and munch it up, I'm sure. Damn thing has been a point sink anyway. I swallowed. That was generous. Thanks, I tried.
No problem, sis. Oh, how about Stray Cat? It's free. What?
Your name. I mean, you could go with your birth name, but that's uncool.
I guess?
I tried. He grinned while a third arm moved from off screen and pulled his cigarette out of his mouth. I'm running a quick diagnostic to make. Ah, fuck me sideways. He shook his head, and I had the impression that he would have been frowning if he could. Right, bit of a problem, sis. What? I asked. Was this the other shoe? You can't turn it on? Oh, sure I can, but the doors above it aren't opening. Give me a sec. I'm looking for a camera around the city that has a view. And there's a hover car parked on the roof. What a dipshit. There's yellow tape and all, for fuck's sake. Seriously? I asked. Yeah, let me see if I can take remote control of it, move it off the top. Longbow shifted to the side, and a fourth arm brought a drink closer to his mouth. A fancy thing with a little straw and a no shit umbrella in it. Car's fucked. He looked by towards the screen. Think you can get up there and boot it out of the way? And then you'll activate it? I asked. Sure thing, sis. You got a way to fly back down to your buddies? I shook my head. Well, looks like you'll be stuck on the roof. No problem, I'm going to pop the door open. There's a door to another roof access. You go over, chuck the car off the side, blow it up, whatever, and I'll turn on the AA. Then you get your ass into cover and wait for the cavalry, all right? And my friends? I asked. Longbow smiled. Nothing to worry about, sis. Big bro Longbow will take care of everything. End chapter 39. Chapter 40. Rooftop. The samurai have developed a sort of community among themselves. At a first glance, this seems perfectly reasonable. A more experienced samurai might have done a lot to teach the ones that's new. And while they are not competing for the same resources, those resources are the sorts to get out of hand if not taken care of in a timely manner. Older, more powerful samurai won't usually begrudge the new ones taking their share of the workload. The truth, though, is a lot more complicated than that. And quite a bit darker. Professor Stevenson, Boston University, late 2039. The room with the AA gun was something else. It needed some high-tech looking places on my It'd seen some high-tech looking places on my media feeds, of course. Who hadn't? But stepping past the door next to Longbow's screen was like walking into another world. The walls were covered in computers and gantries and little machines that were all hovering literally around a machine in the center. The thing in the center had a large glass dome built into its front, covering 2 dozen camera and sensor-looking things. The two long-forked cannons pointed ahead of it. Railguns, if I had to guess. Beneath those were a smaller pair of Gatling cannons with barrels about as big around as my wrist. There were more guns around it, smaller ones mounted on arms that looked like they could point in any direction. It was like looking at the physical manifestation of overkill. And it was stuck here, completely useless. I wondered how many aliens the things could have killed if it had been deployed at the start of the incursion. When do I get to play with something like that? I asked. Most of the loading and repair systems are Class 1. The railguns are Class 2. The Gatling guns are Class 1. Longbow's assertion that this cost approximately 30,000 points wasn't wrong. There are a lot of smaller parts from a variety of catalogs here. I suspect it will take you some weeks to be able to afford something like this if you did nothing but focus on it to the detriment of all else. Damn. Right, I can salivate over Longbow's toys later. Can I keep a recording of you saying that? Longbow's voice said across the room. I jumped about a foot in the air. And a recording of you jumping just there, he replied with a laugh. Fucking hell, I said as I looked around. Where are you? California. I have a nice penthouse here. But if you mean where in the room, there are a dozen speakers and some mics here and there. I shook my head. I swear, if I find a vid online of my saying anything like that, I'll find you and then I'll kick your ass. Longbow laughed. Right, fair enough. I don't want to ruin your rep so soon anyway. Roof access is at the back. Do you have anything to move the car? I've got bombs? I said. That'll do. Good luck, stray kitty. The speaker shut off with a clunk before I had time to tell him off for being an ass. He wasn't all that bad a guy, which just made it harder to be pissed at him.
Are all samurai like that?
I asked.
Of course not. All vanguard are quite unique. Though the criteria by which a vanguard is chosen does mean they will usually be amicable towards others like them. There are entire communities of vanguard who work closely together.
Cute, I said.
You don't have to join any of those, of course. More than half of all vanguard work on their own while still keeping in contact with others. The lone wolf is rather common among the chosen.
I found the roof access at the back, just like Longbow had said I would. It was a heavy door with a wheel in its center that I had to press with all of my weight against a turn. The moment I opened it, I was slapped in the face by a torrent of rainwater. I screwed my eyes shut and bared my teeth for a moment before glaring outside. The door led right into a little section of the roof with waist-high rails around it and what might have been a great view beyond that if I could see more than 10 paces ahead.
Do I have glasses available? Or a hat?
I asked.
Not in any of your current catalogs, no. Sorry. God damn,
I said. I yanked my hair back and tied it into a quick bun, which is always a pain to do one-handed, but it would keep out of my face. I grit my teeth and jumped out, shoes splashing on the floor a moment before I pulled the door shut behind me.
All this stuff better be waterproof,
I said.
No worries. All your equipment should be fine in this weather. I would advise against catching a cold, though.
I nodded, then tore my mask off. It was annoying already, but wet it just became a pain in the ass to deal with. The landing had access to a little parking lot, the sort where VIPs could park their Maserati for maximum visibility, and a little staircase that led up to another higher section of the roof. That's where the AA Guns platform was, so that's where I went. Stainless steel steps clunked underfoot as I moved up and onto the taller roof. Then I kept low as I looked around. No aliens. At least none on the roof directly. I could see flocks of them flying off in the distance, but they weren't an immediate concern. The car, sitting on its side atop the slightly raised lip of the gun position, was. I was expecting some sleek hover car left behind by some douchebag, but the hover car was more of a hover soccer mom van, and one in beaten bad need of fixing up. The front end was crumpled against the cement posts poking out around the edges of the moving part of the platform. There had been some guardrails around it, but the hover van had torn most of those off. Still low, I moved around and towards the driver's side. The airbag had gone off at some point, and someone managed to pry the door open. The bit of blood on the pleather seat didn't hint at any good news for the driver. The back of the van was filled with discarded toys and the kind of accumulated crap that kids tended to grow around them like some sort of fungal infection.
There's no driving this thing off, I said. Do you know how to drive? Can't be that complicated, I said. But it doesn't matter. This one's fucked.
I looked around for an easy way to move the car out of the way, but there wasn't a convenient crane or forklift just sitting there waiting for me.
We're going to need to get creative. Or explosive. A concussion grenade might push the vehicle off the top. Sounds noisy though, I said.
I moved to the back of the van. The bumper there was buckled out, but I could see one of the pipes that probably served as a frame or whatever where the plastic body was torn out. That gave me an idea.
Can I get some rope? I asked. Not with your current catalogs. That Garrett grenade had some rope, though, I said. You could buy one and undo the rope quite easily, yes. It's more of a ribbon, but it's not special, and the way it's designed should allow you to unwind it without any danger. What are you thinking?
I'll need something heavy. I eyeballed the distance between the van and the edge of the roof. 15 meters, give or take.
For 5 points, you could purchase an artificial mass ball. It's a single-use item from your esoteric single-use explosive devices catalog. It makes itself and the things around it extremely heavy for a moment before combusting. It's rather niche. How strong is the strength of the rope bits? You know, when you pull it from both ends. Tensile is the word you're looking for.
And its chain of interlocking graphene blades. It's more than strong enough to do what you seem to be thinking. Cool. Well, give me one of each and we'll try and see how my idea works out. I'm certain there are better ways of moving the car. Yeah, but my way is fun. End chapter 40. I don't know. I, I can't really think of a better way than using the weight trick, other than a big bomb. But the bomb might hurt the AA cannon, wouldn't it? I can't say for sure. The eponymous stray cat. Yes, yes, that's where the name came from, I believe. I don't know where the strut is. I haven't seen anything that makes it sound like she's going to do any kind of dancing. A strut is a kind of dance, right? Well, whatever it is. I will be uploading this VOD onto my YouTube channel of the same name as myself when I get an opportunity. It's got to be a reference to the song. Oh yes, someone mentioned that it was a song by this name. I should look it up. I'll do that later. Well, that's all I've got for today. I'm sorry to leave you on the cliffhanger of how the ball and weight system is going to go. Next time, we'll probably get Kat off this roof or we'll watch her die pathetically. If you want to know more yourself, you can check the book on its webpage at Royal Road. If you'd just like to hear it being read by someone with more talent than a random forest bear, you can check out the Audible book, available on Audible. Other than that, I wish you all a nice day and good night. Take care. It's a tie.